She vanished after betrayal shattered her world, but when silence turned to strategy, the woman they underestimated came back with the power to bring empires down. The piercing chime of Jacqueline Wilson's phone startled her awake at exactly 3:35 a.m. She reached for it blindly, her fingers fumbling across the nightstand. The screen glowed in the dark, displaying an alert from her bank. Her heart thudded once in her chest as her thumb tapped it open. What she saw punched the breath out of her like a gutshot to the stomach. Her account showed minus $45,516.21. The number sat there like a silent betrayal, bold and unapologetic. Her vision blurred, not from sleep but disbelief. She blinked rapidly, as though the digits might shift, correct themselves, vanish into the data void, but they remained. Cold, real. She shot upright in bed, her breath caught between a scream and a sob. Her world tilted, the walls of her small apartment suddenly felt like they were folding in. The air was still, too still. There was no storm outside, no sirens, no screaming, just her. And that number. She opened her mouth to say something aloud, to break the silence, but nothing came. Instead, she started tapping, checking her transaction history, logging into every financial app, reading notifications, and checking balances. The pattern was unmistakable. Large sums have been pulled out over the past 3 days. Unauthorized, all tied to accounts linked with family names. Names that had once meant comfort and connection. Now they burned. Jacqueline wasn't the kind to panic. She was structured, intelligent, and calm. A 32-year-old financial analyst with a razor-sharp mind and a penchant for control. But in that moment, panic crept in, not because of the money itself, but because of what it meant. That betrayal had slipped past her walls, right through her blood. Her thumb hovered over a contact. Dad. The phone rang. Once, twice, then a click. Her father's voice came through, loud and casual, speakerphone crackling with party music and muffled laughter in the background. Hey, sweetheart. It's kind of late. Everything okay? She swallowed, her throat dry. Dad, something's wrong with my account. My card is maxed out. It's overdrawn by $45,000. Did something happen? There was a pause. She could hear her mother laughing in the distance, loud and bright, like champagne pouring. Then he spoke, and it wasn't confusion in his voice. It was an annoyance. You're always so dramatic. The family needed help. Your mom had surgery. Your brother's truck broke down, and we were behind on the mortgage. Jacqueline closed her eyes slowly, a silent tear slipping down her cheek. Why didn't you ask me? She asked quietly. He didn't hesitate. We don't need to ask. You owe us. Her mother's voice cut in with a laugh that could chill oceans. What were you going to do with that money anyway? Buy cake and candles? We had better plans. There was silence. And in that silence, 1,000 memories echoed, birthdays forgotten, favors never returned, expectations placed like chains. And in that moment, Jacqueline gave her final gift. Then don't ever call me again. She hung up. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she moved. Her laptop clicked open. She logged into every account, scanned every signature, and located every obligation she had tied herself to in the name of family. The house, the truck, the loans, every bit of paperwork that bore her name beside theirs. She began her quiet revolution. By noon, the truck was gone, repossessed, and returned to the bank. The mortgage was flagged and cancelled. She removed herself from the consigned loan agreement, reported the bank activity, froze her credit, and changed her passwords. The quiet, methodical rhythm of it grounded her. She wasn't unraveling. She was building armor. She didn't scream or make a scene. She didn't post about it or ask anyone for advice. She moved like ice across stone, slow, deliberate, unrelenting. The fallout began the next morning. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Missed calls, angry voicemails, accusatory texts, guilt-laced pleas. Then the sweet ones came. Jacqueline, what's going on? The truck is gone. Honey, the mortgage is in default. Please just call us. She didn't answer. She sat on her couch, coffee in hand, wrapped in a soft blanket, the same one her mother had gifted her years ago, embroidered with the word believe. Funny, Now.by Saturday. They arrived. Through the peephole, she saw them, her father pacing, face flushed with anger. Her mother was sobbing louder than the wind. Jacqueline, open the door. This is ridiculous. You're ruining everything. She didn't move. Her mother screamed something about betrayal, about abandonment, about ungrateful children. Jacqueline sat still, sipping, breathing, silent. 12 minutes. That's how long they stayed, yelling, begging, then finally leaving. She waited a full hour before she opened her laptop again. One last email. Her lawyer. She removed her name from everything. Utilities, insurance, and family plans. Subscriptions. She had been holding up their world for years. And now she was done. Later, she saw her mother's post on Facebook. It's always the ones you love most who hurt you the deepest. Dozens of sympathy comments. Self-righteous pity parties. But Jacqueline didn't flinch. She changed her number. That night, left one last voicemail. You chose being comfortable over being honest. You broke trust. Now rebuild without me. Then she blocked every number. And for the first time in years, the silence wasn't a punishment. It was a gift. The days that followed were quieter than Jacqueline expected. Not peaceful and quiet. Tense quiet. The kind that lives in the space between a thunderclap and the next strike of lightning. She woke up each morning not to buzzing phones or email alerts, but to her breath. Measured. Calm. Controlled. There were no fires to put out. No fake emergencies dressed as family drama. Only stillness. She started each day with her rituals. Tea instead of coffee. A slow walk around the block. Journaling. She wasn't trying to become someone new. She was remembering someone she had buried under years of obligation. Her. But not everyone let go so easily. Cousin Joyce was the first to break the fragile peace. Her message was short. They're saying you shut off the gas. They're freezing. Jacqueline didn't reply right away. She stared at the message until her phone dimmed. Then she typed, I didn't shut it off. I just stopped paying for it. There was no response. Just the waiting dots. Then nothing. That night, Jacqueline took a long shower. Let the water run over her face until it blurred her thoughts. She stood under the stream like it could wash away guilt. But guilt, she'd come to realize, wasn't like dirt. It didn't rinse off. It had to be unlearned. When she stepped out, her phone was glowing again. An email. Subject line. Please read this. The sender's name was unfamiliar, but she knew. It was her mother. The tone was too sharp, too rehearsed. We didn't raise you to be like this. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. The words had already been spoken too many times. What they never understood was that they had raised her to be like this. They taught her to carry things, to fix, to give. They just never imagined she'd learn to stop. Jacqueline deleted the email, then emptied the trash folder too. That weekend, she went to the farmer's market alone. She bought a lavender plant and a loaf of sourdough. She smiled at strangers. She wore sunglasses not to hide, but to observe without being seen. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel watched. She felt free until her therapist asked the question, when did you first feel responsible for your parents? Jacqueline paused, then said, 14. Her therapist didn't say anything, just nodded slowly. My mom cried because she couldn't pay the electric bill. I started sweeping floors at a salon after school. That memory sat in the room like a guest no one invited. Jacqueline continued. I used to think I was helping, that if I gave enough, they'd stop needing. But they never stopped. They just took more. They saw my love as a resource, not a relationship. The therapist leaned forward slightly. And what do you want now? The answer surprised even Jacqueline. I want peace, and I want it without earning it. The session ended with a quiet handshake and a scribbled date for the next one. Back home, Jacqueline went through her storage closet. She found a box labeled family. Inside were cards, old framed photos, birthday notes, and receipts. So many receipts. Gas bills, car repairs, grocery runs, all in her handwriting. She placed the entire box on her balcony, lit a candle beside it, and just sat. She didn't burn it. She wasn't seeking closure through flames. She was just acknowledging it. All of it. Her phone rang again that night. This time, It was a voicemail. "Jacqueline, it's your mom. Your dad fell, broke his leg. We're at county. No insurance. They won't do surgery unless we pay upfront. Please call back." Her hand trembled, hovering over the screen. That voice, that tone, designed to trigger her, pull her back. But this time, it didn't. She opened her laptop and pulled up two folders. One named Finances, one named History. Inside History were screenshots of overdrafts, photos of empty birthday tables, and emails filled with guilt. Inside Finances was a spreadsheet. Savings, investments, emergency fund. She had the money. She could pay, but the cost wasn't financial. She closed both folders. She wrote a check to herself. Not literal, just a note in her journal. "To my peace fund. Non-negotiable." Then she texted Joyce. "Tell them I hope he heals, but I'm not going to hurt myself again to fix their pain." No reply. And that silence didn't hurt anymore. It felt earned. Jacqueline slept that night with her phone in another room. The window cracked open. Wind whispers through the blinds. For once, she didn't dream of chaos or guilt. She dreamed of a house by a lake. Quiet, still, safe. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't wake up bracing for disaster. She woke up rested. Jacqueline stood at the window of her new apartment, high above the city, where the skyline never seemed to sleep. The buzz below had become her new lullaby, a strange comfort after the hollow silence of the estate she had left behind. Days melted into weeks, and Jacqueline had not spoken to anyone from her past life. Her phone remained untouched, messages unread, calls unanswered. Her absence was loud, not just to her family but to herself. She was not hiding. She was healing. And in that healing, there was rage. Not just against those who betrayed her, but against herself for letting it all happen for so long. At the law firm where she now worked as a consultant, Jacqueline's skills were recognized instantly. She had built a reputation for her precision, her resilience, and a kind of intuitive brilliance that made her invaluable. But even here, in this new orbit, she remained guarded. She kept everyone at arm's length, especially those who tried to see beyond her work, beyond the smile she wore like armor. It was in the quiet hours, when the city lights reflected off her glass walls and her coffee cooled untouched beside her, that her thoughts wandered to Adrian. He had tried calling only once. A voicemail, a weak apology with no mention of the money. The betrayal, the mother who had orchestrated it all. She had deleted it halfway through, not out of spite, but because she knew Adrian too well. He only apologized when he lost something. And he had only just begun to understand what he had lost. One evening, as she returned from a business dinner, she found a letter slid under her door. No envelope, no name. Just her name was written on the outside in block letters. Inside, it was a simple note. "They are planning something bigger. You need to be careful. Watch the trust account." No signature, no hint of who sent it. Her heart raced, not out of fear, but fury. She logged into the trust account one she had set up years ago to secure the education of her niece and nephew. It should have been untouched. Instead, she found a trail of unauthorized transactions dating back 2 months. The amounts were small at first, a few hundred here, 1,000 there. But then a lump sum, $25,000 wired out to an offshore account. Jacqueline's hands didn't shake. Her breath remained steady, but her mind exploded with possibilities. This wasn't just greed. This was a coordinated betrayal, one that had continued even after she had walked away. She printed the statements and began building a case. She knew the law. She knew the language of deception. She had once believed that silence was power. Now she realized sometimes silence had to be broken surgically, tactically, and publicly. The next board meeting of the Wilson Family Foundation, one she had refused to attend since the day she left, Jacqueline arrived unannounced. The room fell silent as she entered. Her mother blinked rapidly. Adrian froze, and the rest of the family shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Jacqueline," her mother said finally, her voice like velvet over steel. "We didn't expect you." "I know," Jacqueline replied, placing a thick folder on the table. "That's what made this possible." She flipped it open. Pages of bank records, highlighted withdrawals, a timeline of every theft, every manipulation, and then signed affidavits from former employees, from a whistleblower inside the offshore bank. It was all here. She had been silent, but not idle. She had turned her silence into surveillance, her withdrawal into strategy. Adrian stood up, his voice shaking. "You don't have to do this. We're family. You had a choice to remember that when you watched them drain my accounts," she said, her voice ablaze. "You chose your comfort. Now choose your consequence." The meeting erupted. Legal threats were thrown, accusations hurled. Her mother threatened to disown her again, to destroy her reputation. Jacqueline listened, calm as ice. Then she dropped the final piece: a legal injunction already filed, freezing the foundation's asset spending investigation. "You taught me silence was loyalty," Jacqueline said, gathering her folder. "Now I've learned silence is consent, and I will never consent to this again." As she walked out, she felt no triumph, only clarity. She had not just stood up to them, she had dismantled the throne they had built atop her back. And as she stepped into the night, the city did not feel so lonely anymore. It felt like freedom, but someone was watching. From a car parked across the street, a figure lowered binoculars. A burner phone buzzed in his lap. He picked it up, speaking only 2 words before driving off into the shadows. "She knows." And in Jacqueline's inbox, a new email appeared from an anonymous sender. "You're close, but not close enough. They're going to bury the truth unless you find the ledger. It's the only thing that links them all." Jacqueline stared at the message. Her war wasn't over. It had just begun. The morning sun filtered through the curtains of Jacqueline's new home, a quiet lakeside cabin nestled far from the city where her past still echoed. It had been 6 months since she vanished from the chaos of her family's betrayal, the media storm, and even Marcus. Silence was her sanctuary now, but silence never meant surrender. She sat at the window with a cup of coffee, her laptop open, to a page she'd never dared to read until now: the final draft of her investigative report. It was more than a document. It was a reckoning, a ledger of every lie, every forged document, every cruel decision that left her stripped of her identity and assets. She had spent every day since her escape piecing it together: names, dates, bank transfers, and a network of corruption stretching far beyond her family. It reached into real estate schemes, offshore accounts, and a tangled knot of corporate deceit. But one name stood out: Marcus. Not her ex-fiancé, but Marcus Delacroix, the man who had mentored him, a man Jacqueline never trusted. Now she knew why. He wasn't just involved, he had orchestrated everything, and her family were merely pawns in his game. She closed the laptop, slid it into a weathered leather bag, and stood. She was going back, not to ask for answers, not to reclaim what was taken, but to finish what she started. The drive into the city was silent. No music, no distractions. Her mind replayed each moment with brutal clarity. Her father's cold stare, her mother's dismissive wave, her sister's venomous glee, and her fiancé's cowardice. They had taken from her because they believed she would do nothing. They were wrong. At her old law firm, she walked in without hesitation. Heads turned, whispers followed. Jacqueline Wilson had returned. She went straight to the top floor, where Marcus Delacroix sat smug behind his desk. He stood when he saw her, but the smile faded quickly when she placed the thick dossier on the table. "I suggest you read it before you speak," she said calmly. Marcus flipped through the pages. His hands began to shake by the 10th page. By the 30th, his face turned gray. "You have no idea what you're doing," he whispered. "I do," she said. "Better than you." She left him with the document and copies sent to the regulatory bodies, the press, and a select few allies she still trusted. She didn't wait for justice. She engineered it. By nightfall, Marcus's name was splashed across headlines: fraud, embezzlement, federal investigation. The fallout was swift and brutal. Her father was arrested the next day. Her mother attempted to flee the country and was stopped at the airport. Her sister vanished from social media. And Jonathan, the man she was once ready to marry, showed up at her doorstep 3 days later, disheveled and desperate. "I didn't know," he pleaded. "You didn't want to," she replied. "I was scared. They threatened me. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to protect your seat at the table. I made a mistake. Let me fix it." There's nothing left for you to fix. He dropped to his knees, but Jacqueline didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply closed the door. The next weeks were a blur of interviews, legal proceedings, and truth. She became not just a survivor, but a symbol. Her story inspired whistleblowers, reform, and a wave of accountability across sectors. But the true resolution came 1 month later, at the very lake where she had found peace. There, beneath the twilight sky, a man stood waiting Daniel Carter. Not from her past, but from her escape. A journalist she had once met in passing, who had reached out with quiet encouragement when her story first broke. "I read your entire report," he said. "You and half the country. I read it before you published it." She looked at him, surprised. "You helped me? I gave you one name. You did the rest." Jacqueline smiled. Not a smile of triumph, but of something softer, warmer. "Trust. I don't know what's next," she admitted. "That's the beauty of finally writing your own story," he said. "You get to decide." They stood together at the water's edge. No promises, no grand declarations, just the beginning of something real. And as the wind whispered through the trees, Jacqueline knew the silence she now carried wasn't empty. It was full of truth, of strength, of a voice that refused to be stolen again. Moral and life lesson of the story: silence is not surrender. It is often the space where resilience is reborn and justice begins. When you're underestimated, you gain the power of surprise. And when truth is your weapon, even betrayal becomes a stepping stone to transformation.